أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم به نستعين إنه خير الناصر المعين. Um, we continue our discussion from last night, and before I get on to the main topic, I need to clarify and explain something. That is, uh, you have to remember, all of you and all of us, and that is the way I always advocate and scholarly life. And as you know, our slogan, which I repeated here, worship smarter, not harder. And worshiping smarter and not harder is basically that is we look at what the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam and Quran have said about being smarter in worship, and we follow that. One thing that we all have to remember: we are not here, or nor do I go anywhere else. That I will be. You have, or you expecting that your mental and intellectual comfort zone should be intact. There is not much point, especially when you come to Ma'arif. If you're going to uh, that's or class of ethics and akhlaq, that's a different thing. Ethics and akhlaq, but there will be much little. Of course, not. There still will be some issues there that can push your comfort zone and disturb your comfort zone. But especially when it comes to more of intellectual talks, uh, that is the whole purpose. The purpose of that is not only you learn something, you hear something, but as presumably is it something to be new. And if it's going to be new, that sometimes it can come to you as a disturbing to your comfort zone. And unless your comfort zone is pushed aside, you're not going to add anything to probably to your knowledge. I'm not here to say exactly what all the things that you already know. There is no point, and then I tell you, and you nod your head, and you acknowledge me. Even uh, even I remember some time back, like 15 years ago, I had a discussion here with our Jum'ah prayer person who was giving khutbah. I was saying, what is this that whatever you come and talk, you're telling to people in khutbah, you don't make anyone's mind steer people's mind. Let them go and think. So that is my point, that things I might say, it might come to you as a bit of challenge, and the idea is to make the challenge in your mind, and that's we have come here to learn. And I have to tell you something. Only those things comes to your mind as a disturbing things that you do not find the proper answer to reject it. Because if someone comes and says something very much against your opinion, and you easily reject it in your own mind, then you can answer yourself if there is any doubt raised. Let's say if someone comes and talk to you and say, there is no God, all of this is rubbish, God is not there, the God doesn't exist. What happens? Yeah, it doesn't bother you really as such, because you don't believe him. When you don't believe him, you just, even if for whatever reason you have to sit and 1 hour listen to him, that doesn't disturb your mind because you outrightly reject it. The only time that you get disturbed, or anyone get disturbed mentally in terms of his aqaid, is when he or she hears something which is new for her, and yet she doesn't have proper answer to herself, not to the speaker. She cannot convince herself that is wrong, but it is also different from her previous understanding and belief. So that is when it becomes disturbing. But the problem is when we hear things and we feel it's disturbing, and we are not able to uh, reject it, and the presenter of that issue is coming up with some backup and support, and brings a reasoning about it or verses of Quran, and that becomes more difficult, and that is when it's disturbing. But I tell you, go and do research. If you cannot answer that, I mean, it doesn't mean that whatever you hear, you have to be able to answer that. The whole thing is to steer your mind so that you go and try to learn. You go to and do research, or come back to the speaker and ask him the question if you have anything in about that issue. So don't be afraid. Don't escape from these situations. Embrace situations like this, because at the end of the day, worst come to worst. What happens? Okay, you don't accept it, right? If you don't accept it, you are not disturbed. I mean, you know that this is very common in even in other realms and in other areas, like when it comes to the scholars. You know that there are scholars that their thinking, their idea about opinions about certain issues are totally opposite of each other. It's totally opposite. Let's say if you're hearing both of them, what would you do? If you hear both people who are very credentialed and uh, they tell something opposite of each other, and you hear both, what do you do? So even what I'm saying is that is very common. That happens, and people go and do research or go to other people and ask, so that they remove the anxiety it might come to their mind. And remember, there is one rule. I've got this one rule for myself from probably from my younghood, that so long as I have the handrail of Quran and Ahlul Bayt, that's fine. And my mind is very much fluid. And I really encourage fluidity of the mind. Fluidity of the mind is because if the mind is not fluid and it's very sort of hard stone, like, and the stone is so hard, and a person doesn't want to hear anything new or anything uh, arguable to him, arguable to her. So that's not good. I mean, that's the sign of somebody who doesn't move forward. But try to get a hold the handrail of Ahlul Bayt and Quran, then you are not afraid of hearing anything. You either reason it, you research it, and then at the end, either you reject it, or you, even if you don't, when you say reject it, I mean you don't believe it. Say, okay, he said it, but I don't believe it. Okay, so fluidity of mind is important. I remember when back in 2009, I started the MNC courses. One of the certificates that I was giving was to the person who had the most fluid mind. Fluidity of mind is really a value to me. But so anyway, I'm just telling you so that don't get afraid, don't get disturbed, don't get anxious from what you hear. But going back on the issue of Dua Nodbe that I told you last night. I tell you, what I said, which I continue in my talk today, what I said, that I don't relate to Dua Nodbe. So that's right, that's fine. I tell you, even dua is like that. I was explaining to someone sometime that there are times you have to read a dua that gives you a feeling you can relate to it. It's not only about my new notion about dua and nutbeh. If it's dua komed, if it's Thursday night, it happens. Yeah, that's happened to me too. It's Thursday night, I have not felt I want to read dua komed, and a Thursday night I have read another dua. Or it has been Friday morning, instead of dua and notbe, even those days that I would read dua and notbe, I felt my feeling is not too much in connection with dua and notbe at that time. So I recited another dua. So dua is something that you have to have by your heart and emotions, you have to be prepared to hear that. Okay. So don't get too disappointed when you heard them.
Disconnected.
Sorry,
volume ऊपर का है बाबा?
who is that? Can you please?
और नहीं, नीचे का 20 तक कर रहे हैं.
Can you please close your microphone? I don't know who is this. So it's so disturbing. Please close your.
स्पीकर का बटन दबाओ.
I think it must be Ali Azim's, and he is not aware of it. Ali Agha, please mute your microphone. So, so sorry, I mean, I get disturbed. Salawat for yourselves. So yes, Dua Nutbi is, I still feel Dua Nutbi is good. And even I tell you, I can even read Dua Nutbi, but I do not make the same understanding that I used to do, especially for those parts of Dua Nutbi which shows me, which is telling me I'm so distant from Imam. So that's about it. And let's go on to your this discussion of today. When you feel disturbed, okay, it is to do with our main topic. Fine. When you get disturbed, remember that the main issue is ma'arif. We have to learn ma'arif, and if we do not learn ma'arif, we are. I read from what Imam Ali alayhi salam says. An-nas salas, alimun rabbaniyun, ومتعلم على سبيل النجاة وهمج رعاء ينعبون مع كل نائب. Those of you who understand, but I translate, Imam Ali says people are three types. Listen to this and get really. I mean, I'm not only talking to you on this type of things. I'm reminding myself to, and we have to be really scared, and we have to shiver be hearing that. Imam says, and not salas, people are three types. Either they are a divine scholar, which is alim al-Rabbani, or they are, that's the first type. Second type is they are muta'allimun ala sabil al-najat. Muta'allimun ala sabil al-najat is a person who is a student, he is learning, and he is on the way of salvation. I mean, like us, all of us. We are hopefully, inshallah, we are all on muta'allimun ala sabil al-najat. We are trying to learn so that we are on the way of salvation. And Imam says the third type, which is really, really frightening, hamajun ra'a, يعني يعون مع كل نائب. Hamajun ra'a is referred to those little flies that are around the ship's walls and around ship's head. It's very little flies that with whatever winds it comes, they go, they move. That means the people who do not, who are just following the wind. Following with the wind means whoever says whatever, they just follow. So we don't want to be Hamajun Ra. The whole idea is we are trying to help ourselves as well as other people to move from Hamajun Ra to Muta'allimun ala Sabil Nijat. And why is that? Why is that people, most of the people, or a lot of people, alhamdulillah, we don't have those type of people among us, but why is that people prefer rituals and amal over knowledge, learning ma'arif? Is basically, it's very simple. The reason of that is being that, as Mullah Sadra has said it very well, he says our mind is like our body. It's got muscles, and it should be exercised so that it is able to learn. If it is not, if we do not exercise, we do not give practice to our mind, so we get bored very quickly. So that's why usually people are happy to recite 100 times salat, 100 rakat of, or unit of salat, but not listen to 30 minutes of ma'arif. That happens a lot. Okay, now let's go to the topic of manazilul kamal, manazilul, what was it? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Manazilul kamal, darajatul wisal. Right? What we want to say is the more kamal, the station of kamal and perfection we attain, we get to more to a degree of visal. Visal of who? Visal to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Visal is means vast, reaching. We will reach to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this issue starts with the issue of Imam Zaman alayhi salatu wasalam, because issue of Imam Zaman is very important, and issue of Ma'soom basically is very important. But for our time, is Imam Zaman alayhi salatu wasalam. Maybe this is a maybe. This is my understanding. Okay, when I say I emphasize, it's my understanding, so that you know that you can analyze it, you can accept it, you can reject it, or whatever. Maybe one of the reasons that the short occultation of Imam, temporary occultation, which took about 70 years, gradually was finished and went into what do you call a long occultation, or sort of permanent occultation, if you want to name it. The reason for that, I sometimes think the reason for that is Imam is teaching people, because before that people used to go to through those nawab of Imam, those representative of Imam, to reach Imam and talk to Imam and write letters giving to those nawab, to his representative, and they give it to Imam, and Imam give his answer to those people, bring it to the person. Maybe the reason is Imam wants people to get directly connected, because in my understanding, I can't think that Imam has disconnected himself totally from the whole humanity, except those very few that has come in their account of meeting with Imam has been written, which they have been scholars, but is it really Imam is only for that? Has Imam totally disconnected himself from us while we are on the earth, and his only blessing to us is that blessing towards his velayat takwini, right? Velayat takwini is just something that you don't even know about it, and Imam is managing or organizing or creating it, making it, and everything comes to you and you don't know about it. For instance, I don't know, the sun beam, or this the heat of the sun, or all the rest of the things in creation that are happening. That is they come to being through the takwini. But it's not all. It's not. Is it all that? What about a personal touch, personal connection? So I think, and this is one paradigm, that Imam disconnected that after 70 years, so that it's enough now. Now people will start to connect to Imam themselves directly. And so we have to know Imam. The point is we have to get to know Imam. And let me tell you how the proximity takes place. How do two things become very close to each other, and that they get so close at the very close proximity. I give you an example of some of you might have heard this example from me, that masalan, let's assume you are invited to a forum, to a place for 1 week, and in that 1 week you are Einstein is there as well, right? And 1 week we sit, talk, have lunch and food and dinner and breakfast with Einstein. We have games, we play, we talk, and the whole 24/7, that's 1 week, we are in contact and interaction with Einstein, right? And after that, we leave. Can you go and tell, I know Einstein? I know that the way, we usually by default, we say that. We say, oh yes, I know him. Yes, I know Einstein. But do you know Einstein at all? And if you say you know him, what about Stephen Hawking? What about does Stephen Hawking know Einstein? Is his knowing of Einstein is comparable to you at all, or to me at all? Why? Because this proximity, this knowing comes from the very phenomenon of knowing what is in the head of the same person. And if we have common knowledge, if you have common ma'rifat, if you have common ma'arif, that is only when we can say, I know him. I tell you another example. People during Ma'asumin alayhi salatu wasalam, for 11 Imam, can they say, can all of them, can they say they know Imams? They knew Imam? Is it acceptable we think that they knew Imam? And if they knew Imam, many of them, they killed Imam, and many of them went to opposition with Imam, and many of them were not bothering even about Imam. So did they know Imam? If they knew Imam, they knew Ma'asum, they wouldn't have been like that. But we have people in this era, or 50 years ago, or 20 years ago, a big, great scholars and great orafa, right? That they know Imam, the past Imams, Imam Sadiq, Imam Ali alayhi salam, Imam Hassan alayhi salam. They know them much better than many people, or most of the people of that time of the Imam. So that is knowing. That brings proximity. That brings closeness. It is that way that one can feel qurb. When you say, remember when we go and start to do salat or other uh, any other worship type of worship actions, we say qurbatan ilallah. So qurbatan ilallah, when we say qurbatan ilallah, we mean we want to get, it is for closeness to Allah. But closeness to Allah it comes with certain conditions. We have to get closer to Him in every day, knowing something more about Him. So proximity is getting into that level of understanding. Of course, when it comes, for instance, knowing Imam, we never get to the full level of knowing them. We get to a degree, but the more we know Imam, the more we are closer to him. The more qurb has happened. Let me give you an example to make my point across. Let's assume you have got a cup of water and you have got some sugar, right? And let's assume the sugar is the main purity, and everything is about sugar. And the whole thing we are working is about sweetness. So sugar is the sweetness, right? And the water has got only potentiality of mixing up with the sugar and become a bit sweeter, right? The water does not have any sugar in it, so it is not sweet. It's only potentially can take on some sugars. So let's start to put 1 spoon of sugar from the sugar to the water and mix it up and stir it. What happens? When you taste it, you can taste a little bit of sweetness. Now you put the 2nd spoon of the sugar into it. You start to do the 3rd one. The more you do, the more sugar you put into the water, the more water potentiality is converted to actuality. Because as I said, actuality is becoming sugar. That was the first assumption. So you continue doing that. You reach to a level where the sugar has got, let's say, 95%. That cup takes 95% sugar, and it has become saturated. It cannot take any more, right? So what happens? You can see very much the proximity between this cup of water and the sugar, because they're so close, and that there's only 5% impurity in that cup of water, and that is because it can't take no more sugar. So take that example and bring that to the concept and notion of what we get when we get to learn ma'arif of Ahlul Bayt and ma'arif of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I hope I could make my point clear to you when talking about proximity. And remember that it's very important, it's much more important more important than seeing Imam, is not as important as a knowing Imam. And knowing Imam is knowing his knowledge, knowing his ma'arif. That is how it works. And in that way, if we can get proximity to Imam in way of knowing and understanding and his knowledge, that way we have become that those are degrees of, or those are degrees of closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for a person with the right concept, with the right proper understanding, he would soon realize Imam is Hazir all the time. It is us who cannot see him. It is us, we cannot. But when I say see, remember, I'm not talking about the eyesight. Seeing by eyes does not have really much value. Let's say, as I gave you the example of those people who have seen Imams in the past. What happened? It didn't bring them any good. But if you see Imam by heart, when you see Imam by heart, that is exactly the same thing. You get to know his ma'arif, you get to get connection, you get to feel closely related. You know, you all might know Ayatollah Ghazi. Ayatollah Ghazi Tabatabai was a very famous arif, and he's the ustad of like the likes of Allama Tabatabai. He was the ustad of the likes of Marhum Ayatollah Bahchat. So he had a lot of students, and he was ustad of Marhum Ayatollah Nijabat, who was as some of you might know, he was my sort of ustad. Not, of course, ustad, not that I was attending his Hose classes. He was giving me some phonic instructions, and he was on one-to-one basis with him. So these people, Ayatollah Ghazi have created people like them. When Ayatollah Ghazi was asked, do you see Imam Zaman? He was asked, do you see Imam Zaman? And you know what he said? He said, be blind those eyes that from the morning when you get up, you do not see Imam. He doesn't see Imam. Be blind the eyes of the person who from the morning gets up and he doesn't see Imam. And when Ayatollah s.w.t. Ansari was also a great arif. He was also another teacher of Ayatollah Nijabat. He says, when he was asked about Imam Zaman, he said, when you can see the God, how can you not see Imam Zaman? So this seeing God, is he referring to our eyesight, or do we see God by eyes? It is not. It is seeing. That seeing is different. That seeing is when you get that proximity of that example of sugar. This cup of sugar was all the time seeing that bunch of sugar, because he has already taken 97% of it. So this is seeing him. Do you get the point? That cup of sugar with 97 purity of sugar was able to see that sugar, the sugar itself, no matter how distant they were. No matter how distant they were. So if we get to know Imam, if we get to know his knowledge, if we understand what he knows, we see Imam all the time. So when Agha Ghazi said that may be blind the eyes that doesn't see Imam, he's not talking about eyes seeing by your head's eye. If you understood, salawat. Open your, I want to take a few seconds of rest. Unmute your microphones and say salawat so that I know that so far you have understood.
اللهم
Okay, thank you very much. Again, go on mute. Your salawat reminded me of Sister Hakime, who is with you. She always writes in her writings, at the end of her writings to me, she says, dua bi dua salawat. Dua bi dua means no prayer, no nothing, just say salawat. Anyway, so this is the way I was trying to say. I was trying to visualize for you how is the proximity, and the more the more we get to get that thing, the more to get to know, masalan, that sugar, again, I bring that sugar, the more the sugar is put into that water cup and is mixed. Remember, that mixing has got also a meaning. Yani, that knowledge must mix up with the water. That knowledge must mix up in the soul. The knowledge that we learn, if it's not mixed up in our soul, and it's only just, the certain memorized thing, and we can only say it, we can only teach it to other people, that is not, that doesn't bring proximity, that doesn't bring hope. Hope is when that knowledge is resolved in your being, in your existence. Okay, so that was about what Allah Aghay Ghazi and Sheikh Jawad Ansari said. Now let's look at why we have to ask the question, why Ma'asumin, why Quran, and why Ma'asumin, they have so much emphasis on learning Ma'arif. Why? And I first give you just few verses, and probably one verse and few rawayat, to see that this is their main emphasis. When they emphasize that, because they want to bring, they are suggesting, they are trying to make us more prosperous at hereafter, right? So they are giving us the best shot. What is the best shot? Gaining knowledge. Let's look at this verse of Quran. وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونَ. That's very clear, and there is no argument about that. And Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says that لِيَعْبُدُونَ means لِيَعْرَفُونَ. Imam says ما خلقت الجن والإنس ليعبدون أو ليعرفون. يعني instead of ليعبدون, you can put ليعرفون, you need to know me. I have not created, God says, I have not created jinn and in human and the jinn except to know me. So that's an amazing statement. So we have all come here to just to know Imam. How do we get to know Imam? Sorry, to get to know God, right? Or let me read few also rawayat. This is from Imam Raza alayhi salatu wassalam. I've read, those of you who have heard me from few 14, 15 years ago, you know that I always quote some of these ahadiths because I think it is important. You have to get repeated so that you know. And I've seen, even after 14, 15 years of me repeating this, still some of you guys are not taking it very seriously. You suddenly go, you have been on for like 10 years, and then suddenly you go away for a few years. You don't even show up, right? So Imam says, Imam Raza alayhi salam says, لَيْسَ الْإِبَادَةُ فِي كَسْرَةِ الصِّيَامِ وَالصَّوْمِ. Ibadat is not worshiping, is not to the abundance and too much of fasting and doing salat. إِنَّ الْإِبَادَةُ التَّفَكُّرُ فِي أَمْرِ اللَّهِ. Indeed, ibadat and worshiping is thinking about Amrullah, is about, we can read it translate it in two ways. One is thinking about God's affairs, that's Amrullah. And the other thing is the Amr might be referring to Alam Amr, which is Alam Ghaib. Yani thinking about Alam Ghaib, the universe of, hidden universe of God, of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yani about Ma'arif Ghaibi. So, or Imam Ali alayhi salam says, Abbaluddin ma'arifatuhu. The beginning of din is knowing God. When the beginning of din is knowing God, beginning of religion is knowing God, then what else? What else? What else do you want to do? And let me read this so that, of course, we don't have this type of people in our group, alhamdulillah. The group that I know most of you, you are, alhamdulillah, mashallah, way above this. But the reason I'm telling this to you now, because it's not only about you, because then when I post these lectures, it can be heard by other people. They may not be like you, and they may need to know these things. It says, Imam Ali alayhi salam says, please contain yourself, be prepared for this. Some of you listen to me clearly. Imam says, al-muta'abbidun bighayri ilmin المتعبد بغير علم, yani the person, a worshiping person, an abid, a person who is in worshiping without knowledge. المتعبد بغير علم كحمار الطاحونة. حمار الطاحونة, حمار means donkey, and طاحونة means they were at the olden days, excuse me, at the older days, at older days when they wanted to ground the wheat to make it into flour to make the bread, they used to have heavy stones, and they put two heavy stones and the wheat between the two heavy stones, and there was a donkey who was turning around, and that was a sort of a milling process, and turning around this stone so that it crushes the wheat. So that is hemaru tahune. Yaduru wala yubrahu min makano. Yani it's turning around and turning around. He's walking so much, turning around, but he doesn't get away. He doesn't get farther from here. He's always at the same place. That's the ibadat of someone without knowledge, right? So we have to be careful about this. And another important hadith from Imam Sajjad alayhi salatu wasalam. He says, لو يعلم الناس ما في طلب العلم لطلبوه ولو بسفك المهج وخوض اللجج. And Imam is saying, if people knew, right? Look, we don't know. Honestly, if we knew, we would have been different. If people knew what is in learning ilm, in seeking knowledge, what is in the seeking knowledge, what good is in the seeking knowledge, they would have sought that. They would have gone after that knowledge. They would have gone after learning the knowledge, even though they had to shed blood. They have to give their blood for it. Or khawzul lujaj, if they had to dive into the very deep of the oceans so that they can find the ilm, they could seek the ilm. So it is so important. That is so important. So this is, I gave you only a few. I don't want to go and keep continue about talking about all, bringing all the verses. There are many verses about this. But now, from here, I want to transfer you to bring you to now the last part of our discussion, which I want to read for you from the Ziyarat Jame Kabire. You all know Ziyarat Jame Kabire. I think Ziyarat Jame is from Imam Ali al-Naghi, if I'm right. And so is Ziyarat Ma'asure, yani has come from Ma'asum. And then you learned about proximity, how we make proximity with something, and we get close, and we get visal, yeah? Manazil al-Kamal, Darajatul Visal, yani the stations of perfection. Stations of perfections are degrees of visal, degrees of reaching to God, okay? But we have to reach to Imam, and through Imam we have to reach to God, right? We have to reach to Ma'asum, and through Ma'asum we reach to God. Okay, some people might have some questions about this notion. Can we not directly go to God, right? Listen, we all go to God. There's no doubt about it. But let's assume, let's look at there is a narrow stream of water. This narrow stream of water is going and pouring into the big river, right? And that big river goes and pours into sea, right? And that sea is connected to ocean. So this example is to tell you, depending on how knowledgeable a person is, or how a good mu'min a person is, he might be that little narrow stream of water, or it can be the bigger river. But whatever it is, we pour into that water to the bigger river, and from the bigger river we pour to the sea, and that sea, let's say that sea, nastajiru billah, this is only example to make you understand. That sea is a ma'soom. That ocean that they're connected to is the God. So nevertheless, through the women from the little stream, you all get connected to God, right? But why we say that, let me read from Ziyarat Jame for you. These are just, Ziyarat Jame is quite long ziyarah, but maybe about 20 pages. But I have taken only a few lines of it. It says, إِيَابُ الْخَلْقِ إِلَيْكُمْ وَحِسَابُهُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ. This is addressing to Ma'sum. إِيَابُ الْخَلْقِ إِلَيْكُمْ وَحِسَابُهُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ وَفَصْلُ الْخِطَابُ عِنْدَكُمْ وَآيَاتُ اللَّهِ لَدَيْكُمْ وَعَزَائِمُهُ فِيكُمْ وَنُورُهُ وَبُرْهَانُهُ عِنْدَكُمْ. Right? Imam says, Iyabul Khalq alaykum means the return of people is to Imam, to Masum. Yani when we return to Masum, right? And our account is with, Hisab means accountability is with them. They take account from us, right? And they are Fasl Khitab. Okay, I leave this part. I just wanted to first to part of it. And then look at this, then another verse of Ziyarat Jami. وَمَنْ أَحَبَّكُمْ فَقَدْ أَحَبَّ اللَّهِ. Whoever loves you, love God. وَمَنْ أَبْغَضَكُمْ فَقَدْ أَبْغَضَ اللَّهِ. Whoever dislike you or have box for you or hates you, he's أبغض الله. He has box for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَنْ اِعْتَسَمَ بِكُمْ فَقَدْ اِعْتَسَمَ اللَّهِ اِعْتَسَمَ بِاللَّهِ. And whoever hangs on to your rope, right, is hanging onto the rope of God. So remember, when in Quran says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad ba'ajil farajum. فَأَغْرَبُ إِلَيْكُمْ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْبَرِيدِ. This is about the God. So Khalifatullah, which is the successor of God, has got the same thing. He is أَغْرَبُ إِلَيْكُمْ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْبَرِيدِ. Yani he is أَغْرَبُ إِلَيْنَا مِنْ حَبْلِ الْبَرِيدِ. Yani Imam is also closer to us than our jugular vein. Same. So when Allah is that, how come Imam is that? But Allah is closer than us to our jugular vein through Imam, through Ma'sum, right? And then the other verse of the last verse that I read for you, it says, بكم فتح الله وبكم يختم وبكم ينزل الغيث وبكم يمسك السماء أن تقع على الأرض إلا بإذنه. Yani when I read these things, I just get crazy. I think, why? How come I should not be close to this Imam, this Imam Masum? I'm seeing him every day. But when I say that, don't take it exaggerating. When you learn the knowledge of Imam, you are seeing Imam every day. That's what it is. When you are in thinking of Imam, when you whatever you want, you turn to Imam and you ask him. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, even ask for your salt, ask us for your salt. What is salt? That little thing that you put on your food, right? Imam says, even for that, come to us. That is Imam that is not apparently alive, but let alone with Imam Hazir, Imam Zaman alayhi salam. Bekum fatahallah, you need to you, by you, listen, by you, fatahallah, by you I open the creation. By you I open the creation. That's not the small thing. And you know when Prophet Sallallahu says, Abbalu khalaqallahu nuri, means the first thing Allah created was my nur, and from his nur, the rest of the creation was created. So similarly, we can say that, this is what all the Ma'sumin. Bekum fatahallah, by you I open the creation. And bekum yakhtimu, and by you I close the creation. Bekum yanzilul ghayth, and by you the rain will drop. And bekum yumsiku sama antaqa ala al-arz, and it is by you. It is yours, because of you, by you, that the sky doesn't come on the earth. What else do we have to know? So this is the maqam of Ma'sum. So proximity of us is towards Ma'sum. We learn Ma'arif of Ma'sum, right? And as also, all Ma'arif we hear is from Ma'sum anyway. Of course, they hear from Prophet, and Prophet hears from God. But we hear from Ma'sum. So our proximity is towards Ma'sum. And so our manazilul kamal, our stations of perfection, is when we learn the knowledge of Ma'asum and we get to know Ma'asum, right? And when you get to know Ma'asum, you are getting to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How? Because Ma'asum has, they have fully all the attributes of Allah. All the attributes of Allah is manifested in Ma'asum. So when it is manifested in Ma'asum, yani they are representing God, they are manifesting the God. So this topic by itself, it may look a bit not easy to understand, but I mean, after Muharram, I can bring this topic as an independent topic to discuss about it, because that's about how the creation has started. What is the relationship of Ma'asum to God and Ma'asum to the rest of the universe? That is very comprehensive and very interesting topic in Irfan. So we are Manazir al-Kamal, our stations of perfection, is that we get proximity and we get that sugar of knowledge, that sugar that I gave you the example, sugar of the knowledge and asma and behavior and ethics of Imam in us. When we get that and mix it in our being, we get that, we get to that Manazir al-Kamal, and that is our degrees of Vesal, that much we have got Vesal to Ma'asum, and through which to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And let's once more wrap this statement so that there is no ambiguity about it. So Manazil al-Kamal, which is perfection, the stages of perfection for us is taking those sweetness of sugar. That sugar is the knowledge of Imam, ma'arif of Imam, the knowing of Imam, as well as his attributes of Imam. The attributes of Imam, generosity, and caring and love and compassion and all these, which are all attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If we can take them on us and we practice them, we gradually get close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to Ma'asum and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as I read earlier, ليس العبادة بالكثرة الصيام والصوم. Ibadat, worshiping, is not only you just keep doing namaz, salat, and just keep fasting. That is there, but abundance of it doesn't make you any much closer than the knowledge that you have to gain. Tafakkur fi amrillah is what we have to know. Anyway, I stop here. I think I went too long, and inshallah, tomorrow we talk further, continue. Maybe not, I'll bring a new topic. This topic is finished here and is concluded. And I wait if there is any question, I answer the question. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Open your microphones and recite salawat so that I hear you. I get the energy of salawat.
محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم.
Ahsan. No question. That's good. It's either my teaching is so good I leave no question. I'm kidding. Or the time is for you is late and you want to go back to the rest of the life. Okay, I wait just one more minute to make sure nothing comes to anybody's mind to hear me, to raise as a question. One more minute.
I just had a question about the sifat that you have talked that Imam have, and how we can implement those sifat in ourselves. If you also could talk about that, inshallah, in the next lecture.
Okay, in the future. Okay, right, sure. I try to get onto that as well. Sure, Baba.
Salam Amu, thank you for tonight's lecture.
Thank you. Salam Shamsia, how are you?
Good, alhamdulillah. Happy to see your classes back again.
Thank you. Thank you. You're welcome. Do you have any question? Shamsia?
Not from my end. Everything was really well explained. Thank you. Inshallah, probably in the future ones.
Okay, no problem. I'm not trying to push you guys to raise question. I just wanted to make sure that there is no question. So anyway, so we finish here for tonight, and inshallah we continue tomorrow 9 o'clock. Please come on time, and I try to I'll make it a bit shorter because tonight it took a bit longer than what I expected. Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Welcome salam. Thank you so much.